We begin in God's name. Greetings. Welcome once again to From the Desk of Ghamidi. The discussions continue in the 23 questions series, and today marks the 64th installment in this series, and we continue with our conversations on the topic of music and singing. We are starting the 7th episode on this topic today. Thank you so much, Ghamidi Sahab, for your time. Let's begin. Without any prefatory comments, I want you to resume our ongoing discussion from the point where we last stopped. The Quranic texts have been brought up. It has been recognized that regarding the prohibition of music, it cannot be claimed that this topic has been discussed in the Quran. We were examining the hadith collection with you. A substantial quantity of hadiths exists, many of which have been reviewed. I hope to explore the collection of hadiths that you have organized, where the issue of music and singing is addressed. There, what are the statements attributed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, that you would like to present?
What could be greater than the realization that my death isn't really my end, that life will actually begin after it? Ask me about the state of my heart, for tales of sorrow are long. Try and you'll see how many tunes are hidden which pain.
Buraida Aslami, may God be pleased with him, reports that the Prophet, peace be upon him, following a victorious battle, returned with spoils of war. A black slave girl came forth in the presence of the Prophet. A black slave girl came forth in the presence of the Prophet. She stated, "O Messenger of God, I vowed to God that if you return safely, I would play a percussion instrument before you and sing a song to you." That woman, or that slave girl, made this request to the Prophet. The Prophet had just come back from a battle. Clearly, it was a moment of celebration. When the Prophet had departed for battle, clearly, the prayers and supplications of Muslims accompanied him. The slaves and slave girls would have also prayed for the Prophet's safety. She expressed that she had vowed that when you returned as a victor, she would celebrate this way. In this manner, she would welcome you. She would play the daf and sing for you. In the Arabic language, it's referred to as daf, but in Urdu, it's commonly called daf. The Prophet said, "If you vowed it, proceed. Otherwise, refrain."
Understood.
That is, the Prophet, peace be upon him, has said two things here. One, if you vowed, then proceed. The second, if no vow was made, then abstain. Both should be understood. If a vow is made for something prohibited, then its fulfillment is not allowed. If it's for something forbidden or disliked or makruh, then the Prophet would never permit it. He wouldn't allow it in his presence. His very first statement would be, "A vow for something forbidden cannot be made. You must not do this under any circumstances." That is, it's not permissible to vow for a misdeed, to commit to something that is forbidden, and then it gets sanctioned just because a vow was made. You would be discouraged. This is the mandate of the religion. The Prophet, peace be upon him, has also deterred from vows involving extremely arduous tasks. That is, on foot, I will perform Hajj. I will not wear clothes during summer. Such vows should not be made. I've presented before you a few examples. What has the Prophet stated here? The first thing he mentioned was, if you have made the vow, then fulfill it. So, it suggests that this act in itself is completely permissible. Fundamentally, it is fully allowable. Nothing in it is prohibited. Thus, if a vow is made, fulfill it.
You know that at 16 or 17 years of age, you begin to grow. You haven't any plans yet, but sometimes you make big plans. You have big dreams. But even then, I didn't have any dreams. I had one dream of becoming a pilot, but that was just a childhood dream, and I never thought about it again.
Indeed.
There are two sides to things. When I addressed these hadiths in the context of photography, there too, two aspects emerged. One aspect was where the Prophet, peace be upon him, prohibited those images that could lead to idolatry or shirk. And another time, he ordered a curtain to be taken down simply because he disliked ornamental representations within his house.
Correct.
Both should be viewed from different angles. That is, if there is knowledge and understanding in studying the religion, one considers a specific point, when and where, and in what context it was expressed. Obviously, this refrain cannot imply that this act is illicit or impermissible, or it's unsuitable to perform in religion, or the intent is to express a disapproval of it. This refrain can never imply this, because the Prophet has initially permitted it. if you have made a vow, then fulfill it. Now there's another aspect to why this prohibition was stated. Thus, it's important to understand it in this context. Obviously, the other aspect can only be that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, would return from battle, the victory has been celebrated. When it's a time for joy and celebration, as a Prophet, he would prefer remembrance and gratitude towards God. Prayers are offered. He wouldn't appreciate that on such occasions, songs are performed for him, peace be upon him. This is the other reason for this term of prohibition being used. The meaning of this refrain is that it doesn't suit my personality, that on a victory occasion, songs are performed in this manner. However, if you've made the vow, then proceed, as it is not a prohibited action.
Okay.
Now, this point is clarified fully, why it was said to fulfill it and why it was said refrain. She said, yes, I truly made that vow.
Here the narration continues.
The narration proceeds. She said, yes, I indeed made that vow. Buraida reports that after this, the Prophet, peace be upon him, sat down and she began playing the daf.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Siddiq, may God be pleased with him, also arrived, and others as well, while she continued playing the daf. That is, she sought permission from the Prophet, peace be upon him. She began playing the daf. Sayyidina Siddiq entered. She continued playing the daf. The Prophet, peace be upon him, stayed seated there. Siddiq, may God be pleased with him, too sat down. Other companions also arrived. The reason for their arrival is evident, as the Prophet, peace be upon him, had returned from battle. Having returned victorious, thus others would have come for the same reason. So, Siddiq arrived, he too sat down, others joined in. She continued playing the daf. However, when Umar, may God be pleased with him, entered, Buraida, may God be pleased with him, observes that the slave girl had covered herself. She saw, that is, noticed Sayyidina Umar, may God be pleased with him, and when she saw him, she concealed the daf behind her. The Prophet, upon seeing this, remarked, Umar, only Satan is afraid of you. So now observe what is the initial point. She concealed the daf behind her. I have expounded on this. It is evident from this that even the slave girls of Medina knew about the strictness of Sayyidina Umar, may God be pleased with him, and his aversion to misconduct and activities that typically lead to immoral behavior, which was so intrinsic to his personality.
Before this, I had never followed any Muslim scholar, nor did I know who was who. I knew the name of Prophet Muhammad, knew who he was, knew about Jesus Christ, etc. And the amazing thing is that when I opened Javed Ahmad Ghamdi's first video and clicked on it, the video was titled, Why Did Allah Create?
Similarly, some activities inherently aren't evil. They are means leading towards sin or deviation. That is, they could potentially lead to something harmful. Thus, one mindset is that one should stay away from such activities as well. Another viewpoint is that people should be cautioned about them. There's no need to absolutely stop everyone under all conditions. Thus, with Sayyidina Umar, in both respects, that is, even for the smallest misdeeds and for activities which might lead to misconduct, a natural strictness was evident, and that too is a facet of personality which sometimes contains a great deal of virtue. Thus, when she saw Sayyidina Umar, so I have noted regarding this, that even the slave girls were aware of the difference between his disposition and that of Sayyidina Siddiq, about his demeanor and the temperament of the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself. That is, here the discussion isn't about religion per se, or about the ethical dimension of something, or concerning any tactic. What is someone's stance? Do we consider its strictest interpretation, or do we assess it appropriately and then make a decision? Thus, this rigor was part of his nature. She recognized it. So what did she do? She hid the daf behind her? The Prophet, peace be upon him, upon seeing this, stated, Umar, Satan fears only you. Now, what kind of statement is this? Umar, Satan fears only you. That is, who was present just before this, the final Prophet of God. She had asked permission from the Prophet, peace be upon him. She started playing the daf, she began singing. One might question, does Satan not fear the messenger of God?
He certainly does.
Sayyidina Siddiq, What a remarkable figure he is. You know his position within the religion. What is his standing regarding piety or taqwa? What is his role in terms of his companionship with the Prophet, peace be upon him? And what is the extent of his contributions to the religion? The Muslims have unanimously chosen him as the successor to the Prophet. He was no ordinary figure. Does Satan not fear him? So this serves as a lesson for the fact that such statements do not become basis for legal rulings. They do not determine what is right and wrong in a matter. In such cases, we must look into its context and the circumstances. Since his personality was marked by strictness, since he was one who would not endure even minor misdeeds, since he was firm about matters that could lead to any harm, thus the Prophet, peace be upon him, has commended this aspect of his character. Hence, regarding this, I have composed an explanatory note which I will recite to you. I have written that this is solely a sentence of praise, not a comparative statement. Various sentences are used for comparisons, and there are others spoken in a way that might seem comparative, yet are simply expressions of commendation. This is strictly an expression of commendation and does not suggest that the Prophet and his venerable companions were engaged in any satanic activities or that Satan was unafraid with them. Neither of these interpretations is viable. That is, no satanic activity was occurring, nor was the situation such that Satan was unconcerned with Siddiq, may God be pleased with him, or indifferent toward the other venerable companions, or unafraid of the final messenger of God, peace be upon him. It does not imply that the Prophet and his venerable companions were engaged in any satanic activities, or that Satan was unafraid of them. Such statements are devoid of any comparative intent and are voiced regarding traits that are inherent to a personality. The intention here is that speech is language, it is not logical reasoning. There, the aim of the expressions should be considered, how the statement was made, and this is crucial for understanding the narrations. Imagine for yourself, if we were not aware of this context, and only this much had been reported by a narrator, somewhere the daf was being played. The Prophet, peace be upon him, remarked about Sayyidina Umar that upon his arrival, it was observed by a slave girl that she concealed the daf behind her, so only Umar frightened Satan. What conclusion would we have drawn from it? In what context would it have been interpreted? What conclusions would have been derived? Thus, place the matter in its context and examine it. Therefore, I draw your attention to the practical nature of topics in the narrations. There, no novel principles or rules are articulated. Instead, regarding the applications, where a certain point is articulated, how it was expressed, and in what context it was made. Now observe the entire matter, as the full narrative has been revealed, that she had sought permission from the Prophet, peace be upon him. She had begun playing the daf. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was present. Siddiq, may God be pleased with him, also listened to her. Other companions arrived as well. She continued playing the daf. However, when she noticed Sayyidina Umar, may God be pleased with him, approaching, she also concealed the daf, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, also made this gracious remark. It never indicates that the Prophet and his esteemed companions were engaged in any satanic activities or that Satan was unafraid of them. Such statements lack any comparative elements and are made when certain traits are predominantly seen in a personality. Here, the reference to Satan considers that every aspect of singing and music, which we have detailed in narration 9. Previously, the narration which was introduced numbered 9. A phrase was mentioned there in that narration, and I had previously expounded on that phrase. I clarified that the breath from her nostrils has a captivating effect that enchants people.
The Prophet expressed this while allowing Sayyida Aisha to listen.
Because Allah will judge based on good and bad deeds. What good have you done and what bad have you done? Then I talked to Javed Ahmad Ghamidi on the phone. The reason I got emotional when I mentioned Javed Ahmad Ghamdi's name is that Allah brought the right person to me. I say that Allah does everything on time, and I have proof of it. I was married to a Catholic woman for 32 years. And during that time, I didn't even hear Javed Ahmad Ghamdi's name. I didn't think about it then because she was also Catholic, wasn't she? Then it occurred to me that she wouldn't have allowed me to become a Muslim. Allah waited until she was gone to show me the way.
We observe this in our elders and also among mature individuals. Clearly, this trait was significantly prominent in Sayyidina Umar. May God be pleased with him, those things commonly utilized for wrongful purposes. Regarding these, the stringent attitude held by individuals like Sayyidina Umar is also a societal necessity, because they help maintain balance. The Prophet, peace be upon him, likely for this reason, has probably chosen not to correct him for this trait. That is, the Prophet, peace be upon him, hasn't even suggested here that Umar should amend his stern demeanor. Why is this woman frightened by you? What does it signify?
When we were in Medina, we stayed in a hotel nearby, not too far from the mosque. We decided to go to pray, but as soon as I walked about 50 yards, I started feeling pain in my back and it felt heavy to breathe. I said, "Mr. Das, this has become difficult. We must go for Umrah, no matter what." So we traveled from Medina to Mecca, and I wondered how we would manage.
How we have had the chance to comprehend the different styles, and through this, we can conclude that based on the narrations, what considerations should be taken into account when making decisions. We should check if there is an element related to human nature being discussed or concerning the occasion, or if the point is made against a specific backdrop beyond these, to interpret them unconditionally with a certain meaning and to infer prohibitions from them is entirely incorrect.
Right. Ghamidi Sahab, the narration you have presented and elucidated in detail each aspect of it, and we have had a chance to learn much. When something is stated in a particular context and setting, how should it be interpreted? Regarding music too, it is argued, had it been forbidden, why then did the Prophet, peace be upon him, permit it on that occasion? I'd like to introduce another perspective to you. From this very narration, some draw a different conclusion. What is your viewpoint on this matter? It is argued, okay, if the Prophet, peace be upon him, listened to it, it was solely the deaf. Thus, our scholars conclude from these narrations that only the deaf is permissible, and aside from the deaf, nothing else is allowed. Therefore, from this narration, as you've extracted an entire philosophy stating it was listened to, the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself permitted it. Had it been prohibited, then this event would not have occurred. The other companions continued listening to it as well. So, what is your position on the permissibility of just the deaf?
Their argument would be substantially strong and would be regarded with great respect and importance if the situation had been such that a prohibition had been clearly established from other sources. That is, it would have been evident that this was the only thing prohibited. The Quran has decreed it as prohibited. The Prophet, peace be upon him, has declared it as prohibited. Its prohibition is founded on the principles of human nature. There are no other alternatives or possibilities in it. When your stance is this, then suddenly we encounter a narration where a slave girl is singing and accompanying it with the deaf. Then you might claim that, see, this deaf is an exception. That is, first establish a prohibition from some source, then this would be an exceptional case. And if not, then this argument holds no weight. I draw your attention to other perspectives.
Sure.
Tell me, isn't it commonly believed that a woman's voice should be veiled?
Yes, that's a belief.
Here, not only is she a woman, but she is also a singer.
Remarkable.
She is performing a song. The Prophet, peace be upon him, listened to her. In singing, the voice reaches its utmost beauty. Sayyidina Siddiq also heard her perform. So, if inferences were to be drawn, they should address these points. This deduction is not sound. This argument would be valid if the aim was to establish an exception.
Right.
Just consider, for instance, it is known from the Prophet, peace be upon him, that silk is forbidden. We understand this on the basis of Quranic principles. Why is it forbidden? Now, on a certain occasion, the Prophet, peace be upon him, permits if a button on your garment is made of silk, it's okay. There's no issue with it. Since the prohibition had been previously clarified, from this, an argument for an exception can be derived. Thus, a counter-argument can be made from it. However, with it, we cannot establish a prohibition, nor can we claim that the Messenger of God allowed the playing of the duf, but prohibited other musical instruments. That prohibition must be independently proven. For it, first, a clear textual source is required. And we have observed from prior discussions that neither is such a stipulation present in the Quran, nor has it been explicitly proclaimed by the Prophet, peace be upon him. There is no established sunnah in this regard. This doesn't mean becoming a scholar, but simply reading or listening to a simple translation of the Quran. These things are easily accessible now in written and audio form. Practical teachings, which we call sunnah, should be understood and practiced as they deserve to be. Javed Ahmad, Ghamidi. He asked Sayyeda and asked her if she would like to listen to music. Then he himself provided the platform to the woman and then requested her to perform. And when we proceed to this narration, here he granted permission. Here he sat and listened. Here Sayyidina Siddiq was present alongside. And later a remark was also made.
Understand why you shouldn't do wrong, because you're not supposed to escape by doing wrong. The ultimate judge, Allah, is waiting over you. Don't deceive yourself by saying there's nothing after this life. There is.
The people informed him that they were saying, Muhammad is the righteous servant of God. Anas, may God be pleased with him, has not mentioned anything in this account regarding the Prophet halting their dancing and singing by the Prophet, peace be upon him.
The Prophet?
The Prophet, peace be upon him. That is, this is the account of Anas bin Malik. Anas bin Malik is narrating that the Prophet had come back from the battle. He recounts that those Abyssinians, or the dark-skinned men, had arrived to greet him. He reports that they were dancing and also singing. They even performed songs which the Prophet, peace be upon him, did not comprehend because they were sung in their language. The Prophet also requested its translation. Evidently, there could not be a stronger endorsement than this. All this transpired. Now the narrator is stating, Anas, may God be pleased with him, did not mention that the moment the Prophet saw them dancing and singing the song. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked them to desist. Why has the narrator clarified this? The reason is that same religious mentality. Since it has been the prevalent notion, the narrator has noted that observe a companion is recounting an event if this had been a prohibited or a disfavored activity, or if it was not to be tolerated under any conditions, then the Prophet, peace be upon him, would have restrained them from singing the song or dancing in such a manner. Thus, I have written that this sentence serves to aid understanding. That is, what the narrator has stated that Anas, may God be pleased with him, has not detailed anything in this event that the Prophet stopped them from such dancing and singing. We ourselves have read previously that on one occasion he himself asked Sayyeda whether she would like to hear a song. On another occasion, the Prophet was explicitly asked for permission and the Prophet granted it. And on this third instance, that narrator himself is making clear that while describing this event, Anas bin Malik, may God be pleased with him, hadn't mentioned their being stopped by the Prophet, peace be upon him. What does this suggest? It suggests that no one should employ it as the foundation of a claim that probably they had engaged in such acts of dancing and singing, and the Prophet needed to halt them, and this might not have been documented. He states that there isn't any such mention in the narration.
What does istidrak mean, Ghamidi Sahab?
It means that at some point a misunderstanding might have arisen, which was clarified. This is a statement of istidrak, correction of an anticipated misunderstanding. Since a religious mindset generally does not embrace such activities, therefore, the narrator has specifically stated that this incident, though, has been related by Anas, may God be pleased with him. Nevertheless, there isn't any indication that the Prophet, peace be upon him, prevented the individuals from dancing and singing. You have listened to this narration. After this, another narration from Anas bin Malik, may God be pleased with him.
Okay, Ghamidi Sahab, you just mentioned that a religious mind does not typically embrace such things. So is it a negative to possess a religious mind? We say that a person should possess a religious mind. A person should adhere to God. So in what context have you utilized the phrase religious mind?
A person should adhere to God, should be a devout Muslim, should be someone who follows the guidance of God and the messengers of God. The religious mind is a special term. You see, among us it's said, this has mulayat in it. Or for example, Iqbal stated, the religion of the cleric in the name of God is corruption. Obviously, what does it imply? Shouldn't there be ulema of religion? The terms mullah and mulvi are significant words. We have held these words in high regard in our society. However, what happens? It happens that whenever a tradition becomes established in a society, along with it, various mindsets evolve, certain attitudes become specific to it. Here the phrase religious mindset is used specifically for this aspect. It actually means that when an individual leans towards religion, they develop a belief that religion equates to worship. In religion, we should perform Hajj, Umrah, recitation of God's name, repeat God's name. What does it have to do with sitting down to listen to a song? How can music also be permissible? So, you see that generally, this type of mindset does not accept them. That is a particular kind of aversion develops towards it. Various aspects of life do not remain balanced. This balance is necessary everywhere. It might be noted that a certain type of mindset, which advocates for a free society, will view things from this perspective. That is, a specific perspective is established, so at times it is necessary to draw attention to it. So, it is not the intention that every person who is religious develops this.
Right, Ghamidi Sahab, that is quite clear.
Is this narration clear?
Yes, sir.
Following this, the next narration is from Anas bin Malik. May God be pleased with him, and we have sourced this narration from Sunan ibn Majah. Its identification is 1899. Anas bin Malik, may God be pleased with him, reports that the Prophet, peace be upon him, passed through a lane in Medina. Some girls were playing the daf and singing, "We are the girls of Bani Najjar. We are proud and fortunate to have Muhammad as our neighbor." It is evident from the words Muhammad becoming our neighbor that it was the occasion when Muhammad, peace be upon him, had migrated and arrived in Medina. We are the girls of Bani Najjar. We are proud and fortunate to have Muhammad as our neighbor. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, heard this, he said, God knows that I too love you people. Clearly, these are the girls of Bani Najjar. They are singing. The song is still on their lips. They are playing the daf too. So, this was an ideal time for the Prophet to state that the song you are singing, its lyrics are wonderful and its content is delightful. However, you should neither sing it nor play the daf along with it. I have previously mentioned that if there already was a prohibition on it, then we would have categorized this as an exception. Neither is there a mention of prohibition, nor did the Prophet, peace be upon him, indicate any concern. And had it been a statement of exception, then it was essential that attention was drawn to the point that do not extend this to make other musical instruments permissible. None of such statements were made. That is, these narrations are considered because we understand what was the context in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, made statements regarding such matters. Clearly, it happened in the street, that is in the marketplaces and in lanes while he was passing through them, while they were greeting him at the moment the Prophet, peace be upon him, had arrived at that time. It was when the Prophet, peace be upon him, was passing through a lane of Medina, some girls, while playing the daf, were singing this song, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, commented on it. God knows that I too love you people. That is, it is a statement of affirmation that emerged from the blessed lips of the Prophet, peace be upon him. At that moment, no comments of criticism or disapproval or attention drawing. Nothing of that sort was expressed by the Prophet, peace be upon him. The following narration, we have obtained its text originally from Sunan ibn Majah. Its identification is 1897. Khalid bin Zakwan states, "We were in Medina on the day of Ashura, and the girls there were playing the daf and singing songs." This we have mentioned on some occasions, that on the 10th of Muharram, there were some gatherings among the Jews. We were in Medina on the day of Ashura, and the girls there were playing the daf and singing songs. We observed this and approached Bint Mawaz, may God be pleased with her, and mentioned this to her. Upon hearing this, she recounted that on the day of her marriage, the Prophet, peace be upon him, came to her home in the morning and sat down on her carpet, like the way you are sitting in front of me. He evidently was concerned. Those were young girls, were playing the daf and singing songs. So she, that is Bint Muawaz, relayed this event to her. She stated that on the day of her marriage, the Prophet, peace be upon him, came to her home in the morning and sat on the carpet, just as you are sitting before me. At that time, 2 girls were beside her, playing the daf and singing a dirge for the elders martyred at Badr. And they included in their song that at that moment, the Messenger of God is among us, who also knows what will happen tomorrow. That is, the dirge was being sung. For whom was it? The martyrs of the Battle of Badr. The def was being played as well, and the verses of the elegy were also recited. And among those, the line also sung by them, which implied that among us is the Messenger of God, who even knows what will transpire tomorrow. That is, the exact words are, وَفِينَا نَبِيٌّ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي غَدٍ. This line was also vocalized by them. They sang in this way, that among us is the Messenger of God, who even knows what will occur the following day. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, heard this, he stated, "Daughters, do not say this. Only God knows what will occur tomorrow." Now observe that when something objectionable was articulated, how the Prophet, peace be upon him, directed the girl's attention. He stated that you should not say this. Clearly, if playing the def was prohibited, if singing was prohibited, if the singing of songs by the girls was prohibited, if any among these was forbidden, then the manner the Prophet, peace be upon him, directed attention in this instance, he would have directed attention to it as well. It is the same point which I have previously articulated, that if music, poetry, or any such similar fine art are utilized for promoting polytheism, for propagating innovations, or are employed to allure people into committing indecencies or vulgarity, then attention will be directed to that specific aspect. That is what occurred here. The music was present. The girls were also singing the song. All these elements were there. However, the aspect which warranted attention, what was it? That they were singing the words, "Among us, that Messenger of God is present, who even knows what will happen tomorrow." The Prophet, peace be upon him, deemed this inappropriate. Thus, he redirected their focus and hence addressed the content of the song lyrics. That is the issue at hand. The reason for using the daf or a melodious voice is to convey a message, a point, or an issue to the audience. As this is an effective means, thus this aspect receives commentary and it is never stated that one should not sing or play the deaf or play the deaf, but refrain from other musical instruments. From this it is evident that the Prophet, peace be upon him, did not object to singing or to musical instruments. Rather, he corrected them regarding the inappropriate words about him, that is, he focused solely on the content. Regarding singing and music, the correct stance is this, which all true Muslims should adopt. This instruction is so clear in this narration that there is no room for a second opinion whatsoever.
Absolutely correct.
Anyone who reflects on it, considering the Prophet's, peace be upon him, approach, will arrive at the same conclusion. To assess whether a song or ghazal is being sung, or something else is being performed, then what is its content? If the content involves aspects of polytheism or innovation, or encourages violating others' rights, it must certainly be halted. Similarly, if the content is vulgar, that too should be criticized. However, fundamentally, neither singing nor playing musical instruments are forbidden. Let's proceed. There's another narration from Sayyida Aisha. It is sourced from Sahih Bukhari. Its number is 5162. Sayyida Aisha, may God be pleased with her, reports that she had been managing a bride's farewell to an Ansari's house. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked, Aisha, didn't you have any entertainment? That is, what had she done? She had arranged a bride's farewell. She was being married to an Ansari. She must have been overseeing the event. So she managed her departure, and the Messenger of God inquires, Aisha, didn't you have any form of entertainment? Listen to the original phrase, Ya Aishatu ma kana ma'akum lahu. Originally, the term lahaf has been used. That is, this is the term lahaf about which we have had extensive discussions. The last Messenger of God is asking here, was there no arrangement for lahav? Was there no arrangement for entertainment? What was being inquired about? He remarked, فَإِنَّ الْأَنصَارَ يُعْجِبُهُمْ لِلَّهُ. That is, this bride has been sent to an Ansar's house. They appreciate some singing and music during marriage events. The term lahav is not negative in essence and indicates that on certain occasions it is even recommended. That is, what balance should be maintained in human life. This life is not merely about waking up and performing worship or praying or fasting. It might be perceived by many as the religious life. However, the teaching of our Prophet is that all facets of life should be balanced. That balance should be achieved. That is, what needs to be present, like salt in dough, should be there in the correct proportion, not more. What constitutes life should indeed be a part of it. It is absolutely correct that the life of a Muslim should have sober and serious goals. It should fulfill its duties. It should portray a good character in this world. His entire endeavor should aim at the hereafter. However, it does not mean that the human traits gifted by God for enjoyment, lahav, or sports have been forbidden or declared prohibited by God. Look here, an occasion has arisen. Thus the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself inquired, you have arranged a marriage and done so in an Ansari's house. The Ansar really enjoy having some arrangement for singing and music on such occasions. Why didn't you organize anything like that? So what is occurring here? Here the Prophet is advising it. That is, a tendency that can develop in someone's personality on such an occasion. The Prophet has taken care of it and has drawn attention to it.
Okay, Ghamidi Sahab. From this narration, what you described about the religious mind, that image also emerges. Those who become more religiously inclined, we see them laying out white sheets where they recite the Quran and claim that on this occasion too, they would uphold the Sharia of God. However, the Prophet has a completely different perspective on it.
My friend, we have been doing the same. When the proper understanding of the religion wasn't developed, obviously the narrations that were regarded as religious were the ones that shaped our minds, and our actions were reflecting those very notions. However, when all this was studied and the Quran was examined, and we observed how the Prophet, peace be upon him, presented the concept of religion and life in perfect balance, then these truths became apparent. So here the Prophet said this. I have mentioned that after this is the narration from Ibn Abbas. This narration is also taken from Sunan ibn Majah, and its number is 1900. Abdullah bin Abbas, may God be pleased with him, states that Sayyida Aisha arranged the marriage of one of her relatives to a person from among the Ansar. The Prophet, peace be upon him, also attended that occasion and asked the people, "Have you bid farewell to the bride?" The people responded, "Yes, sir." The Prophet inquired whether a singer accompanied her. These are the words of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, also attended that occasion and asked the people if they had bid farewell to the bride. The people answered, "Yes, sir." The Prophet questioned whether a singer accompanied her. I will recite to you the Arabic phrase, "Arsaltum ma'aha man yuganni?" Have you sent a singer as well? Sayyida Aisha replied, "No, sir." Upon this, the Prophet stated, "There is a tradition of singing among the people of Ansar." The phrase used here is, "Innal ansara qawmun fihim ghazal." It is the same ghazal that you all recite and sing. The Prophet remarked, "There is a tradition of singing among the people of Ansar. It would have been better had someone accompanied her who would have sung, 'We have come to you, we have come to you. May we remain in peace, and so may you remain in peace.'" That is an expression of joy, a song for celebration. Those words were also suggested by the Prophet, and on that occasion you should have proceeded in this manner. It was a moment of joy. With it, the Ansar would have been pleased, and if some singer had sung this, then this expression of happiness would have been there.
Had this been prohibited, then God forbid, how could this be said?
I am saying the same, you see, and thus I have written about it. It is clear from this that the Prophet, peace be upon him, on occasions of joy, has even recommended the arrangement for singing and music.
Glory be to God.
However, it has been suggested with a consideration for the appropriate content. That is, the content should be positive. Positive does not mean that only Naat or Qawwali should be sung. It implies that such songs should be there where there is joy, purity, and clean things are expressed. These could be topics of entertainment. They could be themes of love. I have mentioned before as well that sometimes the prelude to ballads, with that introduction, the ballad was sung or recited in front of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The ballad of Ka'b bin Zuhair was recited by him himself. Even during the times of Sayyidina Umar, when people wrote or recited these ballads, he said that the naming of a specific woman should not be done for its introductory couplet. However, there was no restriction imposed on writing the prelude. From this we can infer, even though we have seen earlier that his nature was strict too. However, when he became the ruler and held the position of responsibility, then he too struck a balance in this matter.
Ghamidi Sahab, what is meant by tashbib?
That is, where there is an introduction to the ghazal, where there is the depiction of beauty and elegance of women, or there is a tale of romance. Among the Arabs generally, the ballads would begin with this. So, this point is clarified here. And now listen to the last narration of this session. This is the narration of Abu Bald Fazari. We have taken its text from Musnad Ahmad. Its number is 18,280. Abu Bald Fazari says, I mentioned to Muhammad bin Hatib, may God be pleased with him, that I have married 2 women. However, in neither of my marriages was the daf played. That is, to whom is this being said? It is being said to Muhammad bin Hatib, may God be pleased with him. He is a companion, and he tells him that I have married 2 women. However, in neither of my marriages was the daf played. That is, so that it becomes apparent that a marriage is occurring here. The nikah is happening. The entire community, the entire neighborhood, the whole settlement becomes aware that here, according to the command of God, a relationship is being established.
It isn't some clandestine affair.
It isn't something secretive. So it was advised to play the daf and to sing songs on such occasions. Express joy so that people become aware of it.
Ghamidi Sahab, I would stop our discussion here. Unfortunately, we are running out of time at this moment. Today, numerous narrations were discussed. We are embarked on a journey where, concerning singing and music in the corpus of Hadith, we are seeking to learn from you without any omissions, and your perspective in which you stated that it is the use of things that becomes the reason for their prohibition. Many new insights and points are emerging for reflection. We shall continue this series further. Our time ends here. We will be at your service again. Thank you very much for your time so far.
Thank you very much.